2024 is upon us, and already it feels like it's going to be a long year. That being said, I mean, we've had long year after long year for the last couple, right? So what's new? Well, for first, I mean, part of the country's freezing its butt off right now. So if you're in one of those states that is experiencing the big freeze, stay safe. But if you're not, if you're in more mild temperatures, such as here in SoCal, it's definitely a blessing. So looking at this year, I mean, where's my stock going? It's tough. It's been tough. I mean, we had, the big run up in 2020, brought prices to all-time highs, and then the premiums just stuck around for the, years after, which made buying, the nicer stuff that much more difficult. I mean, you've got so many things that go on with, gold and silver that, price predictions and things like that, they just never pan out. I mean, literally it just comes down to, hey, I'm going to make a price prediction. Is it going up? Is it staying the same? Or is it going down? I mean, it's useless information for the most part. That being said, I mean, adding to your stock, anything, right? You're putting money into something. It's a decision. It's a big decision. And it gets more difficult when prices don't change like that. The hard part is, I mean, there's the crowd that kind of feels like, okay, I'm going to wait for a deal. And we have seen some deals, make no mistake. I mean, what was it, a year and a half ago in October when silver spot price was in the teens? I mean, that was a pretty good buying time. Now, could it have gone lower? Yeah, but I mean, given the fact that it was almost $30 an ounce, with premiums or more for a good long time, I mean, that was a good time to make purchases. But now, even after 2023, where price, early on in the year, we had all the hype artists come out and talk about, how big gold and silver was going to be. Yeah, it just never pans out that way. It ends up going right back down, and then even further than where it started. So it's an interesting environment. But I listened to all these videos. I was watching a video from Salivate Metal earlier today about, or actually it was a few days ago, I think, about Dave Ramsey talking about gold, how gold, suckers buy gold. Yeah, I mean, but suckers buy a lot of things. And the funny part is, like, Dave Ramsey of all people, like, it's so funny to me, like, when I hear people, talk about Dave Ramsey and like, oh, Dave Ramsey, blah, 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 he helped me so much. Great, excellent, that's fine. I mean, perfect, more power to you. But when you hear people talking about, Dave Ramsey's this guru, Dave Ramsey is a clown. Dave Ramsey is basically, he strikes me as someone who found a personal finance book, in the 40s and just, kind of relayed that to people. Hey, here's how to, balance your checkbook. Okay, Dave, great. And then he tried to take it, this is something common, like just in general in life, right? There's people who are really good at one thing, but then they try to extrapolate that out to other things and make it seem like I know everything about this topic. I mean, anytime you see something like that, I mean, you should probably turn the other way, especially if you're, bold enough to hear them out. But it's just crazy because, Dave Ramsey, when you really hear him speak on topics about finance and like investment and things like that, it's clear that the guy really doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. He's talking, he's catering to people who also don't know what the hell they're talking about. And that's, again, I guess that's okay. But I mean, I feel like he does a lot of them a disservice. Now, with regard to his comments on gold and silver, I mean, I can see where he's coming from, where those comments come from, as far as, gold making suckers of people. I think it does. And I think, you know what, the hard part about that is it's the stocking community that lets that happen. Why? Because the stocking community lets so much hype prevail. There's so much of that get rich quick that, it's going to skyrocket, that it's protecting you, that it's this, that, instead of just appreciating, silver and gold and, other metals for what they are, the precious metals. I mean, what they have been for a long time. They're not going to, you're not going to reinvent the wheel with precious metals. You're just not. You're not going to get rich with them. You're not going to, it's not going to save you in the apocalypse. It's, it may or may not keep up with inflation. The jury's still out with that. Because I feel like when people make those comparisons, they, cherry pick the dates. Well, from January 3rd, 1963 to 2007, stop. Please stop. It's ridiculous. I mean, and you can do that with anything, right? Like, you can do that with anything. But, with gold and silver, it's a little more believable because I think one of the big things about gold and silver that the stacking community kind of glosses over is the generations that we are now. So like, the last, let's say 50 years, all of us have existed without precious metals being any type of monetary instrument. Never during our lifetimes was, gold transacted as, a day-to-day, or silver, trading silver coin. Now, the argument could be made that, silver coinage, there was silver coinage or different, but that's not the same as, actually trading, bullion silver for goods and services. And so part of me thinks that, the whole hype with, or the whole reason that you see so many of like the older, generation in like coin shops and stuff like that, and, trying to pass it down, and it just becomes more and more rare, where, nowadays it's basically, to me, the stocking community is basically in the pocket of the online bullion dealers. Like you're sponsored by so-and-so, and so, everything's about, selling metals and, keeping up the interest. And that's tough, right? I mean, at that point, once you're in the pocket of the bullion dealers, you kind of can't be, even-handed about what metals are and what they aren't. Now, I love to clown other channels, and many of you, especially the apostles of the different channels, love to say, like, stop hating on those channels. But I will say, I will give credit. Like, one sponsored channel that I feel like gives the, most even-handed approach to their channel is Silver Seeker. Silver Seeker, he's sponsored just like Yankee and Silver Dragons by what's the one with the hokey, how could I possibly forget what bullion dealer that is? This is gonna bug me. Anyway, it's the one with Dr. Tyler Wall calling you to let you know you won $75 worth of bullion. Crazy. But anyway, I mean, realistically, with, Silver Seeker, he does a great job, I would say, of throwing in, the real pros and cons, and really kind of not overhyping it. He does a lot of the collectibles, he does a lot of the history, he does a lot of, kind of reminds me of Salivate Metal, and a little bit of like T, the Silver Stacker, and, a few different channels mixed into one. God bless the Seeker. And so it is, I'll watch it from time to time. Now, there are times when I feel like he's going a little too hypey on the metals, and that at that point I'm out. But that being said, the key, I would say, is, with metals moving forward, is it really like a dying art? Is this something that's kind of like stamp collecting of, of the past? Now, again, there are all kinds of people that will say, well, no, it's money, there's monetary value there. Yeah, I mean, there is, but, there's value in a lot of things. There is value in stamps, there's value in all kinds of different things. So, it doesn't have to be just the metal content, the value proposition. And I think, this generation moving forward, as things become more and more digital, this really does become more and more a relic of the past. It becomes harder and harder in multiple ways to understand, like, what the future holds. Because one of the things that I think about with regard to like metals and like cryptocurrency or things like that, the reason, again, that, the older generations, I'm talking like 70s, 60s and 70s year olds, their parents actually handled precious metals as, currency, as tradable, hey, it was an ounce of silver, whatever the hell, coinage that actually had full-on, precious metals content. And so it was just, it was the way things were done. So it's kind of ingrained into you, right? And then, of course, you pass that down to your kids. But then for the, for the generations that have been born since like the 80s or, the 90s, they never experienced that. It was never a part of their growing up. And even though they may have heard, this is how it was way back when, does it really mean anything to you? If your dad was telling you, or your mom was telling you, how great grandpa rode around in a horse and buggy, does that really speak to you? No. And so the interesting part for me is, like, with metals, it is somewhat romanticized, right? It's like you're kind of keeping alive something from the past. But with the newer generations, like, maybe they don't see it that way. Maybe it's just kind of like, let the past die. You know what I mean? The future's the future. And you'll hear many stackers, when you think about it, take that type of mentality and say to your detriment, right? I can hear you now in your head saying like, yeah, these kids, they don't know what the hell they're talking about or what the hell they're doing. The grid goes down. What's good is your Bitcoin or your crypto. It's not going to do anything for you. Precious metals will do all kind. I get it. But also, is there a cost to have, to keeping so much money in metals and keeping, assets such as these? Of course there is. Of course there's a downside. There's premiums on these, there's storage, there's safety, there's everything in between. So it's not, it's like anything. But it's really interesting to me, like I said, like I think about, the generations moving forward, it becomes harder and harder to justify the pros of stacking, to really get those to come through to somebody who's never experienced it and whose immediate family, never experienced it. It wasn't something that really had, any relevance to their everyday life. It's an interesting concept. And I think that's why you see, metals in general kind of, dying off more and more. Not in the sense of like that they're going away, but they're just not like, you don't see any real hype about it. Which brings me to another point, like, the people who are really fall prey to precious metals are the end of those generations. So that's why you see so many scams involving like older people, like go to blah, blah, blah metals and, we'll sell you some coins and eagles. I was watching a video, I think it was like CoffeeZilla, and they were talking about, they had one of the guys that used to work for one of these firms and how they would, scam older people, that wanted to buy gold and silver. I mean, I see that all the time. People, who are like, I want to do a precious metals IRA or things like that. And it's like, okay, you could do that kind of thing. But the thing is, like, those companies and the way that they operate, it can be very unscrupulous. For example, one of the things that, they were talking about was like one of the ways they scam people is, these people have no concept of what gold and silver are worth. And so what they get them to do is, they get them kind of hooked on buying stuff. And then right before they pull the trigger, they sell them on some collectible coins or things like this with a huge markup, and just pocket the difference. And then these people are holding, gold and silver that they think is like super valuable. And it's not, it's trash. It's common bullion. And so that, they get completely screwed out of their money. And by that time, these people who sell it are long gone, not worried about what happens. But the other part of the scam was that, even these people who do end up, buying from these companies and finding out, hey, I got scammed, what they would do then is offer them like, hey, we see you're not happy, whatever, you left this review. If you take it down, or you change it, we'll give you this, this much in gold or whatever. But the key there is, even when they give that gold, they are using the same type of marked up crap that they sold in the first place. So it's really interesting. And I mean, it makes a lot of sense, but it really does, it's hard to say, because I think it is extremely, bad for, precious metals in general, because it really, anytime you hear about those scams, not only does it discourage other people from buying, from even getting involved in it, but also like you're scamming people who are interested in gold and silver are typically the most vulnerable people of all. They're the people that are fearful of like, the system collapsing and Joe Biden's gonna end it all or whatever the hell. Those are the people that buy gold and silver, from those kind of online or, infomercial type things. Those, grandma and grandpa that get screwed out of their, life savings because some guy wants to make some quick money off of them. It's crazy. But also, like I said, like when you look at the target audience, it's just really sad that, the younger generation has no problem like fleecing, the people least able to afford. And the mechanism for it is precious metals. Again, these commercials of be a patriot and buy gold and silver and no. Gold and silver have nothing to do with patriotism. They have nothing to do with, being safeguarding yourself, or they just don't. They don't. They say everything in moderation, right? Okay, well, that's great. It's definitely great to have some precious metals on hand. You never, just like anything else, food, water, ammo, whatever. It's always prudent to have, a little bit. But it's definitely not prudent to, throw your life savings into something that you don't understand. But there are plenty of people who will help out your family members to do that. The other side of that is, like, when I think about, like, who ends up buying, or what happens to all that gold that grandma and grandpa got? Well, you know what happens to it. Either the precious metals IRA company, when they tap out, they end up, giving it to the kids or selling it to the kids, and then who knows what that they were actually holding. Like I said, like grandma and grandpa would spend $100,000 on, gold and silver, but the kids only, at the end of the day, end up getting $40,000, $30,000 of value out of it. And they don't know any better. So, it is what it is. That's why these kind of things are so interesting to me, and why, gold and silver to me just doesn't have the appeal, to the younger generations, except as kind of like a fad, or like a, hey, get rich quick scheme. It doesn't appeal in that, visceral way of, they understand, like, this is something that, is I don't want to say universal, because I don't believe that, but there are a lot of people that think gold and silver are universal, that they are the final representation of value and money. Okay, I mean, I can understand it. Do I agree with it? No. But it is a really interesting concept to think about, why the younger generations just don't, as a general matter of principle, really buy in to gold and silver.